Welcome everybody to Builder Showcase. And Elaine, this is what, number three?
Yeah, the third one.
Number three. And this is Elaine's project. She's the one that had the idea here. And what we're doing is this is members of my private invitation only Google chat groups, not a public forum, just for people that have come and studied with me or bought one of my video courses. They are eligible to become part of the Robert O'Brien invitation only Google chat group. And Elaine had the idea that when people post, uh, they she wants to learn more about what they're posting. Gary just came in, so let me just get him on here. Gary, how you doing? He's going to take him a minute to get his speakers going there. How you doing, Gary? There he is.
Hey there.
Hey, welcome aboard.
How y'all doing?
Good. We were just getting started here. This is Builder Showcase number three. Elaine had this idea several months ago, and we decided to make it happen. What happens is people would post on the forum with, "Hey, this is the latest guitar I built," and a picture and a blurb, and that's about as far as it went. And Elaine said, I'd like to take this a little farther and learn a little bit more." So we put together this little event called the Builder Showcase. And I'm going to turn it over to Elaine. And Elaine, you can take it from there. I think tonight's guest is Greg Maxwell, and he's going to be uh, showing off some of his work. And also, I heard he's going to show off his wood shop. And by the way, this is top secret. I don't want anybody to know except us and the 5 million people that are eventually going to watch this video. But Greg Maxwell and I have been working on a repair video series. And so sometime between now and before both of us die, we're going to launch that sucker. But it's got some great stuff in there about repair and setup and that kind of stuff. Anyway, Elaine, I'll turn it over to you. I'll let you take it from here.
Okay, Robbie. Well, thank you. So first, I am not coming to you live from the Ryman Auditorium in Nashville, Tennessee. This is the stage view of the Ryman, and maybe one day somebody will be holding one of my guitars and looking out at that. That's sort of my goal if there ever was one. But I'm very excited tonight. And Greg has been one of the people on the list to talk to since I even conceptualized the Builders Showcase. So I have to tell you how I met Greg. Um, Robbie, your forum does a lot of connecting, and I guess over a year ago, Greg posted something that I found very interesting, and in his little signature, it had dogwoodguitars.com.
Right.
So I snuck over to that and lurked around and poked all the buttons. And I tell you, Greg has the most beautiful guitar I've ever seen. I love it. And so I kept poking around, and time went on another, I don't know, 6 or 8 months, and my father, um, we had to shut down his living arrangements, and he moved to assisted living, and he had been collecting guitars along with 35 fiddles, but that is another
Oh,
story.
wow. That's
So
amazing.
anyway, he had a bunch of guitars, and I had guitars, and every one of them had something wrong with them. Every one of them, and some of them were very nice guitars, and I didn't wanna learn on them. And so I called Greg about this time last year, and I said, "If I load all those guitars up in my car and come spend a week with you, can you show me how you fix them?" And so he said, "Come on." And so I did last May, and that has been just it was a wonderful experience because Greg knows exactly what he's doing. Plus, I got the whole beautiful guitar he was talking about because he's kept it. So with that, Greg is in Mount Vernon, Ohio, and uh, and Greg is a professional luthier. He's not a just nighttime in the basement like I am or out in my shop. So with that, Greg, what I'd like to do is, if you can sort of introduce yourself and get started, I'm going to call up the pictures of Dan and that guitar, and we'll get going here.
Sure. Well, first of all, I wanted to say thanks for doing this, Elaine. It's really a lot of fun, and appreciate you having me on tonight. So my background is in woodworking for many years. I've been self-employed for close to 40 years. I've done cabinet work, fine furniture making, and a number of things. And played guitar since high school. And when I was back in the 70s in high school, there was a real popular group, America. A lot of people know America songs, but they've never really attained household name status, like the Eagles. Everybody knows Joe Walsh and Don Henley and those guys. The guys from America were just kind of America. But Horse with No Name, Ventura Highway, Sister Golden Hair, Tin Man. A lot of people know their hits from the 70s. But one of the founding members of that group, Dan Peake, had a custom guitar built for him by a luthier who's pretty well known, a guy by the name of Steve Klein. And Dan is shown, there's the picture of Dan, that's from one of America's albums, their Harbor album. They recorded this album on the island of Kauai in Hawaii. And I saw that picture on the back of the album and thought it was just the most fascinating and beautiful looking guitar I'd ever seen. And of course, I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know who made it. But over the years, I'd corresponded with Dan a little bit. He had a chat group going for a while, and I found out, that Steve Klein built it, learned a little bit about it. And I thought, maybe one day somehow I'd end up with a guitar like that. This was many years before I decided to go to luthier school. So at the end of 2009, I had sold a business I'd been involved with for 13 years, and like, what next? And the idea of building guitars just kind of kept floating to the top. And so I investigated schools and found a real good school that wasn't too far from me up in Michigan, the Gallup School, and went up there, visited, liked it. And so ever since I'd learned to build guitars at Gallup, I'd sort of had the idea in the back of my head to build a guitar like the one that Dan had made. I didn't want to just clone it. I would consider that kind of tacky to just, duplicate it. I didn't want to do that, but I wanted to be inspired by it, but do something of my own design as well. And I've always been fascinated by the nighttime sky. I'm a amateur astronomer. I've got a 13-inch telescope, and in studying the ancient astronomers, I ran across this term called the Mazzaroth. And the Mazzaroth is an ancient Hebrew term for what evolved over the centuries into what we now call the zodiac. And the ancient Hebrews believed that the constellations of the Mazzaroth were put in the sky to tell the story of redemption. And so I called my guitar the Mazzaroth guitar, and it's a study in visual astronomy, and the inlays are all based around that. So the only idea that I directly copied from the Steve Klein guitar was the rosette that's not actually inlaid into the spruce. It's mounted on the surface. It sits proud at the top. And I used Rocklite Ebano for all the ebony parts on this guitar, the rosette, the fretboard, the peghead face, and the bridge, because I wanted a jet black canvas for this work. I didn't want to have to deal with any ebony streaks or anything like that. And so, yeah, that's kind of the story behind how I conceived it. I selected really choice high-end materials for a couple of years before I actually built it. I found this amazing set of Cocobolo online for the back and sides. I used engraved Waverly tuners for the tuning machines. Just really wanted to pull out all the stops. So the entire guitar has gold mother of pearl around the back, the top, the sides, up the fretboard, around the peg head. Robbie, this is actually the first cutaway guitar I ever built using your Venetian cutaway class.
Well, it looks like it worked. It's fantastic.
It went great, yeah. Yeah, that's kind of the story of the guitar.
Oh, let me switch screens around here, and we'll play. Have somebody play your guitar, the video you sent me. Can you talk about this video we're going to be watching?
Yeah, this video was recorded in a home recording studio of a friend of mine, and the guy playing the guitar is another friend of mine, a guy I've known for many years. His name is Brian Ullman, and Brian's one of those guys, you can point to any fret on the guitar neck and any string, and he knows what the note is. He's just an amazing player, and he actually told me he was kind of rusty. He hadn't done much playing for a couple of years, but he agreed to do this video, and he did a way better job than what I would have done. So
All right.
he actually wrote this song for the video.
Oh, wow.
Right.
Man, that was great.
Yeah, really good.
Thank you.
Let me get our slideshow going again, and can't talk and do two things. And we'll look at the inlays and talk about it. So if you want to talk some more about the guitar, that'd be great.
I got a quick
Sure.
question for you, Greg.
Yeah,
Is that a baritone guitar or is that just drop tuning?
that's a DAD tuning, I believe, is what he used.
Okay. Yeah, he was
Yeah.
going pretty low on that lower end there. Yeah.
Yeah, you don't have it down to CGD GAD, do you? I mean, that really sounded nice.
Yeah, it's good.
Thanks. Yeah, so I used real star charts to lay out all the constellations. These are some of the materials that I gathered. I'll tell you, one of the hardest parts of the project was finding the right materials for the planet position markers. I went to gem shows and all kind of places, and everything I found was either too garish, too gaudy looking, or too plain, or the type of material that you had to have special lapidary equipment, if I'm saying that right, to work it. And then I ran across reconstituted stone, and it was like eureka. They had every. I think I got this from the lady that what's her name? There's a lady that sells all kind of stuff like this.
Yeah, she makes all the rounds at all the guitar shows. I can't remember her name right now.
Something about Rescue Pearl, or
yeah, Rescue Pearl.
Yeah. I got most of it from her. But yeah, there's some reconstituted stone in there. There's a slab of highly figured mother of pearl that I use for the full moon. That big square piece in the front is a piece of box elder burl. There's some zebra wood. The wire is Evo gold wire. So yeah, it's just some of the stuff I used for the various planets.
Yeah, I was hopeful. I found in talking with Greg as we prepped this, I looked at this picture, and now when you look at the inlays, you'll start to see where he used these materials. If you can sort of get them in your head.
Greg, is that Evo Gold fret wire any more or less difficult to work with than regular fret wire?
I don't think it is. You know, it's advertised as being somewhere in between stainless steel and nickel, but to me, it works a lot closer to nickel than stainless steel.
Yeah.
I love it.
So Greg, this is a sort of the process, and in this first one, um, this is sort of where you set it up, and here's a
Yeah, the first
job
thing I
for
did was
drilling.
I made a full size plan, laid everything out. You know, I had to take a little bit of artistic liberty with the placement of the constellations. They generally run from the peg head to the sound hole, winter to summer constellations. But obviously, in the limited space of a fretboard, I couldn't position them exactly the way they appear in the night sky. So I had to move them around so they fit in between the frets and stuff. But I laid that out, and then I had a duplicate of each one of the constellations that I used Scotch tape and taped it down to the fretboard. And I used a real sharp awl to punch each star out. And then I had a set of miniature drill bits, and I found this pin vise chuck that I could chuck up into a small drill press. So I was actually able to use a power drill press to drill these out instead of one of those little handheld pin vices. And basically, I drilled out each hole. I used nickel wire of 5 different diameters to represent different star magnitudes. And so I would drill the holes. I would super glue the little pieces of nickel wire into the holes, and then take a file and knock them all down to where they were more or less flush. And then from there, I would just sand them and polish them down like you would do any kind of inlay. There's halfway through the filing process where the file dust is all over the fretboard there.
So Greg, another interesting thing is if you'll talk about it, is this little object in the background.
Yeah, that's where I laid out the 5 or 6 different diameters of wire into a little piece of ebony, and then I was able to use that as a visual reference for which diameter I wanted to use when I was doing every constellation has stars in it of different magnitudes. So, like for example, the real common Orion constellation, there's like 3 or 4 different sizes of star in that if you look at it in the night sky. So that's how I did that's actually Orion there, right? Move to the right there, Elaine, the one where shows the fretboard.
Okay.
No, the other way.
The other right.
Where the wires are being glued in.
I'll see.
Yeah, that's actually Orion right there, if you're familiar with Orion.
Mm-hmm. So, hey, Greg, you said this was based on Nazareth and the Hebrew writings and that. So in the Bible, it says God created the world in 6 days and rested on the 7th. How long did it take you to create that?
Greg took 1.5 years and rested after that.
Oh, wow.
But that wasn't working on it full time. I have to build in between my repair and teaching schedule. So I typically build 1 or 2 guitars a year.
That's pretty cool.
So there's a completed fretboard laid next to the plan. There are a couple little embellishments in there. There's a spiral galaxy made out of abalone shell there on the right. Yep. And then Elaine's favorite embellishment, I've had a lot of people tell me this, is there's Halley's Comet.
Yes.
Down at the other end.
Try and get moved down there. Oh, yeah. I
Oh,
love
wow.
that.
That's
The
cool.
comet is so cool.
And then if you look, there's actually, you can see the 4 moons of Jupiter.
Let's see.
There's 2 on each side of it.
Yeah, I'm at Jupiter. Huh.
Yeah. And I picked a piece of zebra wood for Jupiter that actually has the eye. If you've ever looked at a picture of Jupiter, there's an eye storm on Jupiter.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that little black dot in the lower third of Jupiter that's the eye.
Greg, how come you didn't put the Hale-Bopp comet that smashed into Jupiter?
I only had so much room. But I did include Pluto.
Yep.
The pseudo planet.
That's right. Yeah, so then when I was done with that, I worked on the rosette. And I wanted to use something that was kind of traditional and old school looking for the sun flames. So those are actually taken from some old wood cuts that I found on the internet. That's how they shape the flames of the sun when they would draw the sun. And
Yeah. So here's where you're
those,
cutting that. Mm-hmm.
yeah, I'm cutting out the gold mother of pearl. Boy, that stuff was hard. That particular slab I had, it was like cutting glass. I broke quite a few blades cutting that out. And then that other pictures, I did the same process. Those are the constellations of the Mazzaroth, or what we would call the zodiac, going around their annual orbit around the sun. And I punched those out with the awl and inlaid the wire just like I did with the fretboard. And then I sanded and shaped the rosette into a dome. It's not flat. It kind of has a slightly curved top surface. I think just gave it a little more visual appeal than just having a flat ring. And I inlaid the interior of it with a piece of ebony, and then in between that and sun flames, there's a strip of gold mother of pearl. I use gold Zipflex for the gold purfling around that, around the body, and all the other places where I did purflings.
Oh, here's a better picture of it, standalone. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, and you kind of can see the curvature of it there.
Mm-hmm.
And I made that so that inner binding fit right down into the sound hole of the guitar. There's about an 1/8 of an inch lip that sticks proud on the back side of the rosette, so that popped right down into the sound hole. And then I cut out the space at the top where the fretboard would pass through it.
Is it glued to the soundboard, Greg?
It's not. I fastened it to the soundboard with double stick tape.
Okay.
Because you basically have to pull that rosette off if you ever want to pull the neck off, just the way the geometry and the angle fits.
Right.
And I thought it would make somebody's life a lot easier, especially if it was my life.
Yeah.
If it ever had to be removed, you could apply some gentle heat and pull the rosette right up, then remove the neck, according to normal procedure. It's a bolt-on mortise and tenon with the tongue extension glued down with hide glue.
Right.
So, Greg, can you talk some about how you became so skilled at doing inlay? This is beautiful work. How did you develop your skills like this?
Well, I have a lot of furniture making background, so I've done marquetry and carving and stuff on furniture in years past. But I purchased a 3 DVD set. I can't remember the guy's name. He's a famous. I loaned you the set, Elaine. You remember his name?
Larry Robinson.
Yeah.
Larry Robinson. Yeah, I purchased his 3 DVD set and pretty much learned everything that I didn't already know from his DVDs.
Yeah. Robbie, is he in the process of redoing those, you think?
Yes, we've been working on it for several months. We've got he's going to do three different beginner, intermediate, and advanced, just like his current ones that are very outdated from the 80s, VHS kind of stuff that's been digitized. And so we're redoing those. We've got the intermediate and the advanced footage. He's already sent me all of that.
Cool.
I just need to edit it, and I'm waiting for him to get me the beginning part of it, which is the basic, how to cut pearl, how to select the materials, how to lay things out. But the intermediate and advanced footage that I've received is pretty amazing work. I mean, you guys are going to be impressed with what he's going to present in this video course. So as soon as he gets me the rest of the footage and I find time to edit, sometime this year it'll be out.
That'll be great. That'll be really great.
Yeah, he's amazing.
Does anybody follow him on Facebook?
No.
Follow him on Facebook. He did a lot of those guitars for Martin. They have more mother of pearl and abalone than wood. He did all of those. Okay.
Did he do the millionth Martin?
Yes, he did. And
that's an amazing guitar.
So he's been posting a bunch of those pictures on Facebook over the last week or two. Man, it would just blow your mind. Go check it out. It's amazing. It's amazing. So that's the kind of work that he's going to present in the video course that we're working on.
All right. So we'll move on. We're got a section on construction. Greg, you want to talk about, everybody's always interested in those soundboards and tuning them and all that sort of stuff. So if you want to talk about this, it'd be great.
Sure. Well, when I went to guitar school to learn how to build and repair, I really kind of knew from my background that with the right tools and enough practice, I could learn to build a beautiful guitar. But the sound was a complete mystery to me. I had no idea how or why guitars produce the sound that they did, why some sound this way, why some sound that way, why some sound great, others sound pretty average. And Gallup was in the process of putting together a voicing and tuning class. It wasn't ready to be taught yet when I graduated in 2010. It was still being developed, and they were toward the end of a 5-year process in their whole journey of discovery about that. So I told them, as soon as that's ready, sign me up. And about 6 or 7 months after I had graduated, I got an email that they were going to offer it. And it was an expensive class, but I was obsessed. I didn't care how much money I had to spend. I had to find out how to make guitars sound the way I wanted them to. And so I took the class, and the basics of that class is measuring material properties of wood and choosing wood that falls within a narrow range of material properties. And then what you do with that wood afterwards as far as voicing. The tuning part of it, I mostly learned from Trevor Gore. Gallup really wasn't at that time. Now I think they are now, but say that was 10 or 11 years ago. They weren't really into the tuning part of it yet. But this is how I learned to brace a guitar in that class. This is the condition of the braces in the top right before it's glued to the sides. So you can see that most of the braces are pretty rough shaped, and I do not scallop braces. I shape my braces like an airfoil, and that's to give the guitar a little bit more of a crisp or a little bit extra clarity, as opposed to the more bass and mid-range that you bring out with scallop braces, more of the Martin sound. One thing I do a little bit different than the traditional X-brace pattern is you can see that the tone bars and the wing braces are splayed out a little bit rather than being parallel. But that was a thing that Gallup came up with to perhaps spread the tone more evenly around the top. You know, everybody tends to just do what everybody else has done. And Martin started out with his braces, you know, back, however, when they started with the X-brace pattern, pre-war, you know, with everything just parallel. And that's how everybody's always done it. But they thought maybe, you know, splaying those out a little bit would spread the vibrations around. And you know, there's a lot of things like that. Can you hear the difference between a guitar brace parallel and a guitar brace like this? I don't know.
I can't.
But if you do 10 things like that, the result, I think, can be cumulative, so that you can, you know, shape tone. And you know, obviously you have to major in the majors and not major in the minors. But that's just a little technique that I use. And so I glue them up like this, and then I hand carve all the braces below the sound hole while tapping and tuning the fundamental resonance of the top, listening for a pure tap tone that gets more and more like a bongo drum, for lack of better comparison, more sustain. The more I carve on those braces, the more sustain I get, the more pure tone. You start off with a pretty good tap tone at the bridge, but then it starts to sound like a door as you get around the perimeter. And the longer it goes, I'll thin the top around the perimeter on the playing side of the top a little bit. And eventually you get to a point after you've got some experience doing it where you're like, okay, can this get any better? And you just reach a point where you go, okay, I think this one I've got as much out of it as I can get. And you just kind of learn what to listen for. So it's a combination of ear experience and applied physics. And that's kind of a real quick overview of my bracing style and how I approach it.
Are you saying you get more sustain the thinner you go towards the edges? They get a little looser on the edge?
Yes.
Would that be kind of like the same thing as doing a recurve on an arch top?
Probably so. I'm not an arch top maker, so I can't speak from experience on that. But anything that you do to free the top up to move more, I think, you know, is going in that direction of, you know, better.
Take braces into the side kerfing, or you stop them short?
I tuck the two upper legs of the X brace and the upper transverse brace. I used to tuck the two rear legs of the X braces, and after I took Trevor's modal tuning course at Robbie's, I saw where he recommends not tucking the two rear X brace legs. So I now hold the ends of those two braces as well as all the wing and tone bars back from the linings about 5/8 of an inch. And I think that has made again, it's one more thing in the stack of technique that all adds up.
It's all incremental.
Yeah. But I think that has made a difference that you can hear.
So Greg, you're voicing with the box closed. It's rough like this, and then you reach into the sound hole and do all your scalloping or whatever.
No, the back's not on yet.
Oh, the back's not on. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, now I have a back tuning mold that I clamp the back in that replicates the mass and stiffness of being glued up when it's not yet.
Right, gotcha.
So I've worked out through trial and error what I need to tune the top to while it's in the mold. And for my molds and my guitar bodies that I build, I end up about 100 and 155, 150 to 155 hertz.
Right.
Then, and my backs end up around 190 hertz.
Okay.
Then when I close the box, the top jumps up to about 200. And then when I add a 30-gram bridge, it brings it back down to about 180.
Gotcha.
And then I use Trevor's side mass blocks.
Okay.
And or reaching through the sound hole and carving the braces a little more in order to fine tune it down to final resonance.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah. So when I took Trevor's class, I had the advantage of already having implemented the Gallup method for several years. And I would say that, that made a huge difference in the tone on my guitars, but then stuff I learned from Trevor took it to the next level, especially placing the resonances, staying off of scale notes, getting the proper fourth semitone spread between top and back. I learned all that from Trevor. Yeah.
Was this guitar built after or before you studied with Trevor?
This was the last guitar that I built before I took the class from Trevor.
Okay.
And I actually reached in the sound hole and retrofitted this guitar after the fact with the side mass blocks. And let me tell you, that's not fun.
So
but it made a difference.
That was my next question. So you retrofitted the mass in there. How much mass did you put in on those blocks, and what did you notice was the difference?
Well, I dropped the top resonance some, the way Trevor describes, and I also felt like I did get some extra volume out of the guitar. I don't remember the weight of the block, weight of the steel that I added, but it's much more than what I'm using now.
All right.
I've got my process dialed in now to where I usually end up only maybe 2 or 3 hertz high, and I'm using just 1/8 inch by 1.5 inch wide pieces of steel on each side, and one of those usually drops me down to where I need to be.
Okay. Wow, you've really bought in here. You're all in, both feet, huh, with Trevor's method, right?
Well, I'm not using the Falcate brace system,
right?
But other than that, yeah, I use most of the things I learned from him at the seminar. Yeah.
Right. And that was what, 2017 or 2018? You were here.
17, I believe.
17.
Yeah.
Okay. Good.
Yeah. Might even have been before that, because actually, I moved back from Kansas City to Ohio in 17, and I was still living in Kansas City when I did that.
I think that was the first year that we offered it. We did 2 classes in 2017, 2 in 2018, 2 in 2017, 18, and 19. Okay. And then we were supposed to do it in 2020, and obviously he couldn't get out of Australia because of the COVID thing. But we're scheduled to do it again in 2021 if he can get here.
Okay. It must have been early in 2017 because I moved back to Ohio in August.
Class was in July. Yep.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh no, that class was in April. The first time we did it was in April.
Yes.
Yep.
Because I had a wedding in DC that same weekend, so I flew from Kansas City to DC and then flew from DC to your place.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah.
All right. So this is the back. Would you like to talk about it?
Yeah, I found this set of Cocobolo. I actually found it on eBay. And in my experience, wood like this doesn't often make it into what I call the public sector. I think there's a lot of professional luthiers that have their suppliers, and they're like, anything like this ever shows up, you send it to me. But I found it on eBay, and it was expensive. I think I paid $750 for the set.
Ouch.
But yeah, but I really wanted to spare no expense just for this one guitar. So yeah, some people have said that looks like a heart on the back. Other people have said it looks like a monkey. Other people have said it looks like an alien.
I
It's
think
beautiful.
a guitar back.
Thank you. Yeah. So
What's the finish, Greg?
Balin stringed instrument, high gloss lacquer.
Lacquer. Okay.
Yeah. So that's a photo I took right after I'd got done doing my wet sand and buff out.
Wow.
Beautiful.
I had a lot of trouble with the grain fill on this.
Cocobolo, huh?
Cocobolo, yeah. Who could figure? I used a product from LMI, their Chemcraft paste filler, and I love that stuff on mahogany necks. It's beautiful. I use it on every neck, and I've used it on a lot of other woods with success as well. When I applied it to this guitar, it looked great. I tinted it jet black, put it on, sanded it back, sprayed my sealer coat, sprayed 3 more coats of clear, and it all turned tan. I don't know if you can see it in any of the other pictures of the guitar, but I tell my wife now, yeah, that's all those little tan grain lines. That's the Milky Way.
That looks great, though. I mean,
I was not going to sand it back to bare wood and start over again.
Yeah.
Wow.
But
with that much figure and stuff going on in that wood, have you noticed any movement?
I've not had any movement or any cracking. What I have noticed is if you look at it in just the right light, there's some like a little strange kind of, I don't know what to describe it. It's not a flaw, but it almost looks like oil floating on the surface of water.
Right.
A little bit of weird iridescence.
Okay.
But it doesn't seem to have like affected the lacquer at all. It's not, there's no adhesion issue or anything like that.
Right. Well, it's beautiful.
Thanks.
So, Greg, I think you want to talk about your purflings here and the bindings.
Yeah, it's Cocobolo bindings. The purflings are all gold mother of pearl, zip flex, all the way around the top, the back, the sides, up the sides of the fretboard, and around the peg head.
That's beautiful. I still keep admiring the comet. That is just so cool.
That was what turned me on to visual astronomy clear back in, I think it was in the mid to late 70s when Halley's Comet came through. And I sat out on a hillside with my brother and sister in the freezing cold January weather and watched it for about 2 hours with binoculars and was just fascinated. So yeah, I had to put the comet on there.
Yeah. So talk to us about your peg head and your thoughts on designing peg heads.
Yeah, so I'm kind of an old school traditional guy when it comes to design. And I had sketched out some ideas just at my desk in school when I'd finish up something maybe a few minutes earlier than some of the other guys. And so I kind of had the rough idea for this drawn out, and then I refined it when I got home. And I have this book. It's a coffee table book called The History of the American Guitar. And it's got guitars in here all the way from turn of the century, all the way up through modern. And like some of the peg heads in this book, they just always captured my attention and admiration. And I kind of appreciated the artistry back in those days, even of architecture and buildings, where they obviously did things for the beauty and not by how economic it was or easy to produce. And so many modern peg heads to me, and again, I always want to clarify, I'm not criticizing anybody else's design. There's no morally superior right or wrong. But for me, I didn't want to design something specifically and simply just based on how fast and easy it was to do. I wanted it to look like what I wanted it to look like. And if it took me 3 times as long to execute it, then that's the way it was going to be. And I realized that's not a smart business model. But I like how my peg heads look. They're kind of old school. and they're not real. It's not a real good design for doing purfling either. But I managed to get the zip flex all the way around it, and I think it looks pretty good.
Yeah.
That's actually a miniature version of the Mazzaroth there on the peg head. That's the sun, the earth, and the mini constellations encircling around it there.
Cool.
And the day, if you can see there underneath the strings, it says the Mazzaroth
Mhm.
in little tiny block letters.
Oh.
Yeah, that was not a fun day cutting those out.
You did all the letters individually?
Yeah.
Okay.
Wow. How long did you say it took you to do these inlays?
Now,
I don't remember. It probably took me an entire day to cut those out. Once they're cut out, it's pretty quick to inlay them.
Mhm.
I'm going to guess, Greg, that if you lifted your hat, it would be kind of shiny. And I imagine you had hair before you started this project.
And my beard was black.
Yeah.
Huh. So, do you all have any other questions while we're here talking about the Mazzaroth? Because we're going to switch gears and talk about Greg's shop next. So, any more
I
questions?
would like to hear the guitar played again. You don't have to play the entire video, but I'm having seen the inside of the top. I want to listen to it again if that's okay.
I'll start it up. You know, you're pushing my abilities to be able to do it twice.
We have faith in you.
I couldn't resist just listening to the whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really
That's a great
great.
sounding guitar.
Mhm.
Thanks.
All right, let's move on and check out the um, shop. I think I still have the wrong video up. Hang on. Here we go. Greg, I found it interesting. This is like
This
the
is my
third
shop. This is a 20 foot by
This is like the third shop you've built, I think, and you told me how finally kind of figured out what went in one. So you had a
Well, yeah, I've had shops my whole 40-year woodworking career. I started off in a basement, and I had a real shop shortly after that I built from scratch, a 40 by 40 pole barn. Then I used a 2.5 car garage in Kansas City, and then we moved back here to Ohio and bought this place here. It had this outbuilding that was a horse stable when we bought it. So I've done a lot of work to this building. But yeah, this is my third physical location, maybe fourth, and probably my fifth or sixth iteration of the inside. So every time you do it, you fix something that you've said the last time. Boy, if I ever did this again, I'd do this or that. So it's pretty efficient at this point.
Here we go.
40-foot building. It used to be horse stalls. There used to be a big overhead garage door right here, but we sided over top of that when we added vinyl siding to this building. So this entrance door right here is the only entrance to the shop.
Elaine?
Yes.
My
I just wanted to
power buffer is
yeah, that one shot in there was the inside of it the day I was moving in. That's why everything's just kind of sitting everywhere.
I got you. So this is
Yeah.
that's why everything's thinner instead of around the walls. Okay.
That black
entrance
stain
to the-
on the back wall.
What you make on the motorcycle?
That's a 2009 Heritage.
No, I meant what Luthery tool is that represent?
That's stress reduction.
Ah, got it. Okay.
shop.
Yes.
My power buffer is right here inside the door. I've got the buffs covered with plastic bags so they don't get contaminated with wood dust. And this is hooked up to a dust collection system. There's one main trunk that runs down the whole length of the shop. And you can see the dust collector clear down on the far end with drops off that center trunk line to each one of the machines. And this seems to be the most efficient way to run it and the least amount of air friction that reduces suction. So that's how I have that hooked up. This is my spray room. There's an explosion-proof exhaust fan. It's a really good one, American made. It's got louvers on the outside that automatically open when it's turned on, and there's a frame built into the front that fits these air filters that I get by the case from Granger's. That's a bicycle mechanics repair stand that's very handy for holding various things while I spray. And there's a little rack right here where I can hang up guitars and necks as they come away from the spray gun. There's a hook in the middle of the ceiling right here that stuff hangs from while I'm actively spraying. There's a few customers' repair jobs that get left in here during the winter time overflow because my guitar storage area in the main shop's rather limited and I don't spray in here in the winter time. And then on the right there's some shelves which has all the basic spray and touch-up stuff that I use for various repairs as well as spraying new builds. There's a set of stairs that I had a local carpenter make. This used to be just one of those kind of rickety pull-down stair things that came down from the ceiling, but I wanted something more substantial, so we built these steps. And this goes up to a loft area where I have a recording studio and some more storage, and also my forced air furnace is up there too. And you can see that it's closed off with a trap door that's made out of visqueen with wood framing. And I found it made it much, much easier to humidify and dehumidify the main shop when I closed up that loft area and put this vapor barrier in. So that's what that trap door is for. So let's step on around here. And there's my spray hose that goes into the air hose that goes into the spray booth with my water trap and regulator. Come around here, there's a little work surface for the computer. Some storage area down underneath some shelves for various routers and power tools, and then storage shelves for wood storage. Got some back and side sets, some tops that have been graded and measured for material properties and tagged based on the various results from that. Bracing. I like to mill my bracing for the year at the beginning of the year, and then it's acclimating and relaxing and doing all that kind of stuff until I need it. And some more shelves here. There's my LMI plate joining jig, which I really like, and some bending forms. And there's my Fox style side bender, which I have screwed to this bench and pretty much leave it there all the time. I use this bench a lot. mostly for building. I do a few repair things on it as well. This vacuum unit right here is one of the best things I ever added to my shop. The pump is down underneath, and it's just fabulous for holding various things while I work on guitars, but especially for doing neck setting. I just find it so much more beneficial to have both hands free when I'm pulling sandpaper and working on a neck set. So I love that. There's plenty of storage underneath this bench for more routers and power tools and various things. There's a heat plate with an iron that I use for loosening up extensions when doing resets, neck resets. There's a couple of vices here. There's a body vise and a Stumac red vise. This is a 1920s era mandolin that came into the shop a couple of weeks ago for a major repair. The peg head was completely broken off, and you can see it's just about done. Got my drill press. If I was going to do it all over again, I'd get a drill press, I think with electronic variable speed. I have to open the top of this and change gears every time I want to change the speed. Sometimes that can get cumbersome. This is my drill bit storage cabinet. This is some old antique cabinet I picked up somewhere at a garage sale. It's got some carving chisels and some clamps, but mostly it contains all kind of drill bits. And oscillating drum sander, and again, this is all connected to the dust collection system. My tool cabinets. This is my main work area in the shop right here, especially for repair. And this is my luthier's bench. I built this based on some plans I found on the web. And I love this bench. I have a vise on either end. This is a vise in the foreground. It's called a multi-vise. They're hard to find. They are very intermittently available. I don't think they're available anywhere right now. Stumac used to carry them, but they don't anymore. And it tilts 360 degrees all the way around, up, down, left, right. It's a great, great versatile vise. And then on the far end here is just a simple leather-lined jaw vise. And this allows me to work on either side of my bench. So, for example, when I crown frets, I can work on the treble half of the frets on one vise and then flip it around and work on the bass side of the frets on the other vise. I just find that really handy. And I've got all the stuff that I use basically for repair in this corner so that I can reach anything while still standing at my bench. All my truss rod adjustment wrenches and files, rasps, screwdrivers, clamps. Got a oak tool chest there with all kind of stuff in there, rules that hang on the wall, my optivisor, of course some good lighting, got LED lighting overhead. Back over here is my belt disc sander. I use this for all kind of stuff. Almost never a day goes by where I'm not on that for something. And that's a sample top I use for instruction. My dust collection system and my compressor back there in the corner. And this is a big stationary work area. It's actually an extension for my table saw, just back over here. That's an industrial contractor saw. I don't use it for much, but when I need it, it's really great to have. There's all kind of storage underneath it for molds and templates. And I also have my radius sanding dishes stored in there. Gold sticky tape dispensers for the various grits. Sharpening station. This is a sled that slides back and forth, if I can show you. This slides back and forth and slots my fretboards. This is the big garage door. It still operates. We didn't take any of the rails or springs down, but we insulated and sided over the outside of it because for my purposes, it was just really a big heat, humidity, and air leak. So it's completely sealed up now, but if I ever want to convert this back to a normal garage, all I have to do is cut the siding off of the outside of it, and it can be restored right back to an operating garage door. And this little jig right here is a jig that I made for radiusing my braces. Another shot of the table saw. I actually use this more for sanding parts than I do for cutting. The steel table makes a great place for sticking down sandpaper and flattening up and truing large things such as the backside of fretboard blanks and that sort of thing. My bandsaw. That's a good old bandsaw I've had for about, gosh, almost 40 years. And my neck jig, which I find invaluable for doing accurate fret leveling and fretboard leveling. This is my humidifier. It's a whole house floor model humidifier. It does a really good job of keeping my shop at about 45 to 50% humidity in the wintertime. This is my thickness sander and my joiner. And this is the main storage area for repair jobs. Got a few over here too. Have some hooks in the ceiling where I can hang up guitars that are drying and curing. This is one of my students' guitars. My last student of the fall built this guitar with me in 2 weeks, and it's been sprayed. He left it with me for a professional gloss finish. And unfortunately, he's having some health issues. This nothing that he's not going to recover from. It's not COVID, but he's not able to come back. He's got one more day with me to do the final setup and assembly, and then that guitar will be done. So I'm kind of waiting to hear from him. And this is a very important thing right here. This is a poster that my daughter got me. And this shows every Beatles song ever recorded, what CD or album it was recorded on, and what musician played what instrument on each track. So really cool. And then back over here, we've got my downdraft sanding table, which uses furnace filters and a furnace squirrel cage blower. This is great to have for any heavy-duty sanding operations. Got my air sander right there, which I use a lot, and then use sandpaper and bins according to grit. And some more storage, and my electric panel, and we're back to the entrance door and my buffer.
Wow, all that to build a car.
So that's my shop. Spent a ton of time out here, and it's a really great work environment that I really enjoy.
Great shop.
Yeah. Questions?
Nice.
Probably
It's
go back.
fantastic. I enjoyed that
Yeah.
tour.
Thanks.
So, Greg, tell us about that vice you can't get anymore. I admired that thing the whole time I spent the week with you.
Elaine, you know where to get one. You just have to distract Greg long enough to
You got a good point there.
All you have to do is tell me there's a snake back on the bike trail and I'm gone. Yeah, I'm a snake guy too. So, yeah, it's called a multi-vice. It's made in China. It was carried by Stu Mack for a while. And when I went to school at Gallup, they had one on the main instructor's bench in the front of the student area. And Brian Gallup had one on his bench. And Brian told us one day, I recommend that you go out and get one of these right away because Stu Mack used to carry them. Then they went away. Now they're back, but we don't know how long they're going to be back. And so I went home and ordered one right away. It was expensive. I think it was about $500. But I had the benefit. I had sold a business before I decided to go into Luthery. So I had a fund from that business sale to sort of fund my, getting into guitar building and school and stuff. So I got the vice, and then sure enough, within 2 or 3 months after that, it went back off again, and I've never seen it listed anywhere else. And just about everybody that comes to the shop asks me about it. It's extremely versatile and handy.
So, other questions? We'll just open the floor up for whoever has a question.
What got you into guitars? From
Playing guitars to meet girls. I started playing guitar as a junior in high school. That was 1974. John Denver was at the height of his popularity, and John was my original guitar hero. He played jumbo guilds, 6 and 12 strings. So for a long time, I thought that was the epitome of the guitar maker's craft, was Guild 6 and 12 strings. I learned later that you can make almost any guitar sound the way you want if you have a multi-million-dollar recording studio and an engineer that knows what he's doing. But to this day, I still like Guilds. But I started playing guitar mostly to meet people and especially to meet girls. And I found out later that being wealthy and having cocaine had a lot more to do with meeting the girls than playing guitar. I was never either wealthy or into cocaine, so I ended up meeting a really great girl, but not because I played guitar.
That's great.
But yeah, so I'd always had an interest in woodworking and building things. I mentioned that I'm a snake guy. I've been into reptiles as a hobby since I was a little kid. And I started a business building reptile enclosures and incubators and stuff. And then I moved from there to being a commercial green tree python breeder for 13 years. And when I got done with all of that, I really sort of wanted to kind of get back to my roots and get back into some kind of woodworking, but not a heavy production setting with tons of sawdust and all that stuff. So I'd always thought one day about maybe making guitars. And that idea just kept floating to the surface. And so I started investigating schools. And I thought it would be a really low stress, laid back, easy way to make a living. And I thought surely I could sell 5 or 6 guitars a year. And I found out that it's an extremely rewarding, but very difficult and high stress way to make a living. And I do real good right now to sell 1 or 2 guitars a year.
So, Greg, another interesting thing when I visited you is, um, you're just not the Maseroth. That's a special guitar, but your typical guitar is made from a little different plans than I think many of us use. So, what's your base plan that you build your guitars off of? The ones that you typically build to sell, your student guitars, that sort of thing.
Sure. I have 3 sizes or 3 models that I build: the Monarch, the Eminence, and a true jumbo. The Monarch is actually the student guitar that students build at Gallup. And I was so impressed with mine and how it sounded that I bought the templates and molds from Gallup when I graduated to come home and duplicate it. And so I've kind of taken the lowly student Monarch and brought it to a whole new level with my own peg head and all. I've done them in about every kind of wood you can imagine, special custom rosettes and all kind of stuff. But that was my first guitar. And then I wanted to design something that was a little more finger style specific. And that's where I came up with the Eminence. I can't really call it a completely original design because it's roughly borrowed from the Grand Auditorium as far as shape and size, but it's a 16-inch bout. I pinched the waist in a little bit more and rounded the shoulders a little bit more in an attempt to bring out a little bit more of the treble end of the spectrum. It's also about a half an inch less deep in the box than the Monarch. And I really just kind of used what I had learned and hoped that it would sound like I wanted it to sound, and it really does. That's the model that the Maseroth guitar is made from, is the Eminence model. And then I do a true jumbo. Like I mentioned, I cut my teeth playing guitar on John Denver records, and I've always loved jumbos. And so I built a true 17-inch jumbo, which I call the Kingston jumbo, which is when I built the Monarch, I didn't feel like it was appropriate for me to take that home and put my own name on it because it was designed by Brian Gallup. So I felt like the right thing to do was to continue to call it the Monarch, but I just put my own peg head, and embellishments on it. So when it came time to name the Eminence, I wanted to keep with, kind of the royalty theme, the Monarch. So I came up with the Eminence, which I really liked. And then for the jumbo, I call it the Kingston Jumbo because it not only has that same, royal flavor to it, but I was a big fan back in the day of the folk trio, the Kingston trio. So that's where I kind of purloined that name for that from. So I call it the Dogwood Kingston Jumbo. And so those are the 3 that I build, kind of how they came about. I purchased the plans for the jumbo from I don't remember which supplier, but it's based on the Gibson SJ200 and the Guild JF65. They're both 17-inch traditional jumbos, you know, the famous Elvis Presley guitar.
Other questions?
But where do you do your tap tuning? Do you do that in your audio thing upstairs, or do you do it in your shop?
I do the carving and the ear tapping here at my bench, but then I take it up to the recording studio when I record the taps to get the frequencies, because it's acoustically, it's a better environment up there. So on the day that I'm voicing and tuning a top, I do a lot of running up and down the stairs. It's not ideal, but I get the results that I want. So that's how I do that.
Greg, you talked about, probably no one tweak is something you can hear, but you do 10 of them, and all of a sudden you think you go, this is better. So I'm just curious. So you've been at this 11 years and making a living at it and building guitars and working on guitars. How much better a guitar do you think you build now than when you started out, and what are the real differences?
Sure, that's a great question. I do think there are a few things that you can do with voicing and tuning that will immediately make a big noticeable difference. So I want to clarify that. But there are a lot of other things I think that are much more subtle, but they tend to be cumulative and stack up. So when I built my first guitar at Gallup, we had, I would call that guitar semi-voiced, because they had a very specific brace pattern and shape, and we measured everything with calipers. You scallop at this exact place, this tall, and it was a good sounding guitar. I built, I think, 3 guitars maybe. By the time they were offering their voicing class, like I said, it was less than a year after I graduated. And so when I went back and took that, they told me this will make an immediate difference in your guitar's tone. And the biggest part of that was learning to measure the material properties of wood and then thinning each top based on that top's material properties rather than just building to a numerical standard. You know, for example, you might say, well, I take all my Sitka spruce tops to 110 thousandths. That might be one approach. I measure the density and the modulus of each top, and I thin each top based on that. So some of my Sitka tops go down as thin as 95 thousandths. Others will be 100, others will be 105. 105 to 107 is about as thick as my tops ever are, but it's based on the modulus. And so getting a good piece of wood and thinning it to its maximum while still remaining in the safe zone for strength, I think was the biggest thing I did to immediately get better clarity and balance out of my guitars. I have a spreadsheet that I use. I plug all the numbers in, and it calculates target thickness for me based on a certain deflection. And it's amazing how much mass it adds to a top by changing just a few thousandths of the thickness of the top. So that was a big turning point, learning to thin tops based on modulus. Since then, it's been a slow evolution. I've learned different things and tried them, not tucking the rear braces that I learned from Trevor, placing resonances specifically rather than just randomly, keeping them off the scale notes. That was another noticeable improvement for me. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. So you've been to Trevor's class. You also did the other voicing. Do Trevor's numbers work out about the same as what you've been doing?
I have never ran Trevor's spreadsheet personally myself, but I've had other students compare their results from Trevor with my results from my spreadsheet. And yeah, they generally work out to be the same. Okay. The variable in there is the builder's deflection. You sort of have to pick the deflection of the top that you want, and then you can build a few guitars, see how that works out, see how much bridge rotation you're getting, and then adjust from there. I remember when I was taking the class with Robbie at Robbie's with Trevor, and he got to the point on a spreadsheet where there's a value in there that he had to put in for his deflection to fill out the rest of the spreadsheet. And someone asked, how did you come up with that value? And he said, I guessed. and you could hear an audible gasp in the room because we're like, we've sat through 2 days of math formulas, and now you're telling us when it gets to the important part you guessed. But I knew what he meant. He wasn't, by guessing, he didn't mean he, put his finger in the air and just pulled a random number. He had a target zone that he was looking in, but he guessed at that value within that range for his first attempts and then dialed it in as he went from there. So you might have a spreadsheet or use Trevor's method, and I might have one, and we might be a little bit different just because we might have different target deflections. But we're going to be close. We should be.
Yeah. Somebody else.
So
What?
here's kind of a question for you, Greg. I listened to the replay of the guitar, and I was imagining what the top looked like in the photo, and thinking, well, to me that looks like a stiff top, and it sounded like it was a stiff top, but it was very, very clear. The individual notes were very clear. Was that your goal? Was to try and make a guitar that played very clearly?
I would
not
say
just my guitar, but your guitars.
Yeah. So my, everybody has a tone in their head that's their ideal tone or
it's
their
called
target.
tinnitus.
Exactly. Yeah. I don't want to pick on Martin, but I can use them as an example of something that I'm not going for.
Right.
To me, Martins sound bass heavy and mid-range heavy, usually at the expense of good trebles. I want a guitar that's balanced across the spectrum, and I think I could honestly say I don't think my guitar lacks in bass, but it's specifically tuned for clarity and balance. That's what I'm going for, and I value real sweet, chimey treble in a guitar. Now, not tinny or overly bright, but I want it to be sweet. I like the term Trevor used, alluring. And I think it's much, much easier to build bass into a guitar than it is to build great treble into a guitar. Basically, to get more bass out of a guitar, you just have to loosen the top up more.
Well, a classical maker might say that's
okay. That's steel string. Yeah, I don't build classical, so I have to give you that caveat. Yeah, all my experience and my remarks would be for steel string. Yeah.
Interesting. Thank you.
But you're right. That did start out as a very stiff top, but it was also an extremely light top.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right. Looks are deceiving.
Well, and part of the deceiving appearance of that too is those braces look really clunky, but those were glued on in the rough and then carved, so they look completely different when they're carved.
Sure.
Much lighter. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Interesting.
Any more questions?
I'm asking for the reason that the subject I'm going to do next month is right along these lines.
Mm-hmm.
And so we'll talk about it next month, and I think it'll be an interesting discussion.
I'll look forward to it.
Yeah. Any more questions?
I don't have a question. I think your shop is great. I'm really jealous.
Thanks.
Yeah, it is.
I have a funny story. I had a customer in my shop a couple of years ago, and we were talking about our marriages. We were both in real long-term original marriages. I've been married to my wife Grace for we had our 40th anniversary last year, and I think my customers was like at year 37, 38. And so we were just remarking, that in this day and age, it's somewhat unusual, to have long-term marriages like that. And I said, the thing about my wife and I is we are like polar opposites on everything. We don't even see color the same. And he's looking around my shop and he says, I'm guessing she's the free spirit. And he was right.
Yeah.
As you can tell from my shop and my guitar work, I'm rather anal.
That's a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I guess for a guitar maker, yeah.
Or somebody married to Grace.
Yep.
Yes.
Ooh, Greg and Robbie and Peter and Steve, Bruce, Mac, you all keep showing up, and I really appreciate that. But
Oh, these are fun.
it's amazing to me that I started this because I thought everybody grab up their guitar and hit a few licks on it, and we talk about what they did. And people have just been so proud of their work and love what they've done so much. We've had such cool videos and insights into their shop or something else about them. And I really appreciate it. So, Greg, I appreciate the trouble you went to create those 2 videos for us, and and the time to talk about it.
Honestly, Elaine, ever since I built that guitar, I wanted to have a good video of it being played. So this was just an excuse for me to actually get it done.
Well, that's what Chris Bear said, so that's a good thing. But I really appreciate it. But it's heartwarming that that we have people in what we love to do that take pride in their work, and they've thought about it and have so many thoughtful things about it, and are willing to tell what they've done, share information. So thank you so much, Greg.
I got another question.
Oh, good. Here we go.
You're in Columbus, Ohio?
I'm about an hour north of Columbus in Mount
okay.
Vernon.
I was going to ask if you ever heard of a fellow by the name of Parker McDonald.
No,
Okay.
don't think so.
All right. Thank you.
All right. We'll count to 3. It's your last chance, and then we'll be done with this one. 1, 2. Steve, one more question, surely. You ready? Nope.
Nope.
All right. Thank you, Greg. We really appreciate it.
Thank
And
you.
Greg.
Thank you all.
Thanks, Elaine.
Thanks, Elaine, for putting it on. Good
Yep.
deal.
Yeah,
all right.
appreciate the opportunity.
Hope to see you all next month.
Yeah,
Will
thank
do.
you, Elaine. And next month is Steve then, right?
Yeah.
Reportedly, yes.
All right.
Thanks, Greg.
So at least you'll have one guest, Elaine. That would be me.
So anybody that's listening right to the end of this, Steve and I have already talked about his what he's going to do, his demo. And Steve has 3 guitars, and 2 of them are really the same, except for the bracing, as much as you can make them the same. And you can see if you can hear a difference in them. And then
That'll
he
be
has
fun.
another guitar that's right out of that family. We'll see if you can hear a difference in it and the other 2. It's very fascinating. So I encourage you to tune in. And if you don't catch us live and ask questions, well, catch us on YouTube. All right. Thank you, Robbie. Thank you, Greg.
Thank you very
Thank
much,
you.
Elaine. We'll see
All right.
everybody next month then, right?
All right.
All righty. Take care. Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks.